Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Management Insights. My name is Jamie Davis, and I'm one of your VGP practice coaches. Today, I wanted to talk about something that I know isn't a favorite topic, but a definitely necessary topic, which is DEA and talking about controlled substances and how we manage those in our facility. And there are 4 different areas which will be important to evaluate to determine whether your DEA program currently is a nightmare or is it a fairy tale? And I'd like to help with making that transition from into something that's a little bit scary to something that can definitely be a lot easier and have a lot of process and systems in place that make it stay consistently in good compliance. So those 4 different areas that we're going to talk about just briefly is record maintenance, record auditing, staff training, and then also security and storage. So I use the references nightmare and fairy tale because really we want to look at every controlled substance that comes into our facility as telling the story of its full time with us, and kind of also how we've set up our backdrop or our stage, or what are those information about our story that tells us where it takes place. So when we look at first that setting the stage, what we want to look at is the security and the storage. How are we going to house these products? Do we have the right lock boxes? Are they in the right locations? Are we handling those things appropriately? And we also have other things in our facility that are part of our security. Everything from staff selection and that documentation of evaluating those staff members. And then also for things like how are we setting up our security in our office, just kind of in general, security systems, also things like entry doors. So we want to be able to have a clear understanding of what those things are, and that those are, again, consistently in place and evaluated for that accuracy. And as I talked about staff training, that's something that's important to also have consistent measures, consistent process that is in place to make sure that we not only train at the time of hire, but that we also do consistent annual training for all staff members. Every team member in your practice has the exposure or opportunity to be around controlled substances. And since the DEA's focus when doing an audit is looking at diversion, we want to make sure that we know the full story of that product and also all the people that could possibly interact with that product during their time in our practice and even after they've been utilized. So we want to be able to then record everything. So this is where the records come into place, is setting up those records to, again, have consistent, measurable things that we're doing every single time. The boxes are filled in appropriately in our logs, and also that we are filling out those logs in a timely fashion. Real time when possible, but at the very least, it has to all be completed by the end of the day. And those logbooks never go home with anybody. Those have to stay in the practice. So building in time to make sure that those things are done accurately and consistently by the end of every business day is really critical. Because at any point in time, the DEA could walk into your building and want to do an audit. So those records need to be readily accessible, which means that you can retrieve anything that's asked for very quickly, or at least within a reasonable amount of time. And that all those things are done and accurate, because penalties from the DEA can get pretty steep. So we want to be able to make sure that we have these measures in place so we don't have any of those penalties occur if an audit were to happen. So how do we set up, look at the accuracy? How many things do we need to be tracking? What different forms? So there's a lot that goes into the details of that. And again, once you have consistent process in place for each one of those points of that product in your facility, it's going to become much easier to audit those things to make sure that they are staying consistent. So we have to have the process and then checking in on that process with an audit. So weekly audits are oftentimes the most recommended and easiest to do to stay consistent with our controlled substance logs. And we also have other things like inventory that we do, which is another form of auditing that we should be doing on a consistent basis. And the things that most often get missed are this biannual inventory, where we're doing a full inventory of our controlled substances every 2 years, and it's documented appropriately in that inventory log. And that's right, there's lots of logs. There's logs where we purchase products. There are logs where we are tracking our key holders, and there's lots of different things that we want to make sure to have, again, clear documentation, because with the DEA's focus of looking on diversion and what opportunities that product might have had to be in the wrong hands, we want to be able to show that full, clear path in a very succinct type manner, because as you have somebody come in doing auditing, they're not going to want to try and interpret and dig through a lot of things. So they've got to be consistent. They've got to be accurate. And one of the things that I think I learned too in doing this research is looking at some of the things that maybe I didn't do the best in practice, maybe was a little bit out of line with what I should have been doing to be in compliance. And one of those things was wasting product. So if we had a cc and a half drawn up for a patient and ended up only using a cc, what do you do with that remaining half of a cc? Well, I think a lot of times it was just, oh, we're going to squirt it down the drain, flush it down with some water. Actually, you cannot do that. You have to correctly dispose of those products that are no longer able to be used since they were drawn up and in the syringe that you administered to another patient, right? We can't put it back in the bottle. So there actually are some disposal products that are appropriate and recommended to be able to destroy that unusable product. And then, of course, we have expired products, so being able to process those appropriately. So again, what happened with that product throughout the full time of your facility, even if we didn't have the opportunity to use it? So I hope that's shed a little bit of light on DEA and the guidelines. And we've created a new tool for you to make this a little bit more detailed. Obviously, I couldn't cover all of that in today's Management Insights, but if you go through our self-audit, it'll take you through these 4 different areas where you can look at each one of these components and evaluate the different regulations, not only that are issued by federal DEA guidelines, but also what happens in your state, because some states will have some different, more stringent regulations on controlled substances, and you need to follow the most stringent rule for your area to make sure that you're in compliance. So access that form, go ahead and do that self-audit, see where those opportunities are to make some tweaks in your process and take that DEA compliance from a nightmare into a fairy tale, make it a little bit easier for everybody on team, have everybody feel a little bit more comfortable with handling those controlled substances. So good luck with your mission on controlled substances, and I will see you next time.